Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alina Nuñez, and I am very proud to have here with me today Alejandro Rodriguez. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
Hi, Alina. How are you? I'm
I'm
doing
great.
very good.
Good,
Awesome.
good. I just wanted to give about another minute. I know we're all like on Miami time sometimes,
Yep, of
but
course.
I do value everybody's time that is here joining us, that you guys made it on time. So we're going to give you props and credit for that. But I just wanted to give about another minute for any of those that are joining us, trying to connect to the webinar so that they can join us, because I am excited for today. Looking forward to all of the important information that we're going to cover, that we're going to talk about, and having Alejandro with us as a guest, a co-host on this webinar is fabulous. I try to, when I do these webinars, not just be me talking. I try to bring on other people that are going to add value and are really going to, give a little bit more information on different topics besides the legal aspect. And I'm so proud and thankful for your time, Alex, of having you on here today. So I do see it's 12:05. We have about 18 people in the room. So I think, it's time to get this started. Like I said, I do appreciate those that came, joined on time, and your time is valuable. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off. And those that join us can join in once they come into the room.
Yep.
So for all of you that signed up and are here uh, for our webinar, I'm sorry, seeing here, Leanne, you have sound issues. I'm not sure if anyone else is having sound issues. Let us know in the chat, but I don't see a reason why it should be having. But if you continue to have, okay, great. Katie says she can hear us. Sasha, okay, wonderful. So if anything, Leanne, once we're done with the webinar, everybody that registered today, you will get an email with the link to the webinar, a replay of it. So if by chance you're having sound issues now, hopefully when you get that link, you'll be able to watch us all over again, and you'll be able to hear us without any problems. So as I mentioned, we are here today to talk about the 7 costly mistakes that families make with their money and their property, and how we can avoid these. And I mentioned, my name is Alina Nunez. For those of you that don't know me, maybe this is the first webinar you attend. Maybe you just joined us on social media, started following us. I am an attorney here in South Florida, and my practice areas, I specialize in real estate law, estate planning, and probate. So I like to call myself a dirt lawyer, whether you're buying a piece of dirt or you're going to be buried under it eventually. I'm here to help you plan. And so with that, I'll let Alex talk a little bit, Alejandro talk a little bit about himself, introduce himself. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Alina. I appreciate it. Yeah. So my name is Alejandro Rodriguez. I am the founder and wealth advisor at Zenith Point Wealth Management. I've been very fortunate that I created my own independent wealth management firm after about 17 years of banking and wealth management experience, everywhere ranging from JP Morgan to Morgan Stanley. I decided, I really wanted to venture out and give that white glove service to all my clients. And I decided that the big institution was not the way to do it. So I broke off and started my own firm, and happy to say it's been 2 years up and running, and it's been the best decision I've ever made in my life. So thank you, and I appreciate this. Obviously, thank you for allowing me and having such a trustworthy partner with Alina so that we could go ahead and share some, I think, valuable experience and knowledge that a lot of people are lacking.
Absolutely. And I totally understand you. I've been a practicing attorney for 23 years now, and opened up my own practice 14 years ago. And it was definitely the best decision I made. So I totally get where you're coming from. My focus was, I wanted, to help families. I wanted to help maybe, the smaller families, smaller people, smaller estate planning, who still need that estate planning. All of us, I know there's plenty of financial advisors who only have like a certain limit that they work with. They want nobody that has less than like $5 million in assets. And hey, that's great. Absolutely. We all want that golden egg. But
Right.
reality is, there's all types of people that need the same help, that need an estate plan. And it shouldn't be something that's out of their reach, and it shouldn't be something that's only for the wealthy. And I'm sure same thing with financial planning advising. We don't start off wealthy. We build that wealth. So to have someone like you from the very beginning helping someone build on that wealth, that is wonderful. Because I know it can get frustrating. When I first started, many years ago, I didn't have, I mean, I don't have a lot now, but, just whatever little bit I had, being much younger, and I wanted to kind of do something, and, knowing like, hey, I want to start out and start doing, investing. And because I know before in the blink of an eye, you're looking at retirement. And a lot of times it was frustrating because nobody kind of wanted to give you the time of day, because like,
Correct.
you only have that much. Well, it's not worth it. So personally, I try to help even those that maybe don't have a huge estate, but they still need that planning. They still need that protection and growth with them. So thank you, Alejandro, for being here. Really appreciate it. So let's get down to business. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about estate and financial planning strategies and what it is that we need to do. What does that mean? And this is a topic I think that a lot of people don't like talking about, because they don't want to talk about their money with you or with even family, because they feel like, son interesado. They just want to know what I have, and they're very kind of secretive about it. Or maybe they feel some sort of embarrassment because maybe they feel like they don't have as much as they should have by that point in their life. And with the estate planning, nobody wants to talk about dying. That's reality.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's two things you can't avoid: death and taxes.
Yeah. So how in the financial planning side, like the way I help my clients when they come in and speak with me, and I see about, they're feeling uncomfortable, like, oh, hey, talking about dying, we're not going to bring the Grim Reaper in through the door. He's not going to come knocking. You're not going to have him there standing next to you with, dressed in black. Like, this is life. We got to talk about it and plan, and that's it. So how are some things, like, do you see the similar situations with families that don't want to talk about this or hesitant to?
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, it's a topic that I think a lot of people tend not to embrace. And the sad thing is, it's actually the topic that I'm usually most excited to talk about, just for the simple fact that it's really putting the puzzle together for the individuals. Because you know what? We all do the same thing. We all have the same investment platforms. We all try to kind of use the same tools. However, the estate planning, financial planning is so unique to the individual that we have to get down to a granular level of saying, hey, this is what I have. This is what I'm planning to do. This is who I'm planning to leave it to. How am I going to accomplish that goal? Or, you know what? This is what I see retirement as. And then start planning for legacy. And I do think it's very uncomfortable. And unfortunately, this is really where you and I think the collaboration really comes into play. I think we're able to be here, have an open discussion, because without that, you'll never have the plan to get you to your end goal. So yeah, I think obviously the similarities that we see between this is pretty much widespread. However, it's definitely a conversation that we must have, and it's extremely critical.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. And also how intertwined the two are. A lot of times people might plan financially and like, okay, I have this money, I'm going to invest, I'm going to grow. But if you're not protecting that money for the future, for the legacy, for your grandchildren, your children, for whatever charity maybe you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, we can't take it with us. Okay. So they go hand in hand. It's not just about, it is about the today, but it's not just the today. It's also about what's going to happen. So that's why having both of these conversations is so important, because they do very much go hand in hand. So you can't just plan for one and not plan for the other. So definitely it's something.
An easy way. An easy way I say it, it's build, protect, and transfer. To be honest with you.
Love it. Absolutely. So, all right, let's get into then the 7 costly mistakes that families make with their money and their property, and how potentially we can help have them avoid it. So, number 1, The biggest mistake I see ever happen is not having an estate plan. And there's different reasons why people don't have an estate plan. One, like we talked about, is they don't want to talk about it. They just feel like, well, when I'm dead, I'm dead. Let them deal with it. And I hate to say that ostrich syndrome, like I say, sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich and like, oh, somebody else will deal with it. All you're doing is just leaving headaches for your family, potentially having them fight things out in court, having to pay taxes on that wealth that you built, right? That Alejandro has helped you build, and now because you didn't want to talk about putting a trust or a will because, oh, I don't want to talk about dying. Well, now guess what? Your kids are going to have to pay, taxes on that because we didn't set it up correctly. And, you don't have control over who receives what. So without having a proper estate plan in place, you're letting the court, we say, if you don't have a will or an estate plan, the court has one for you. And it's based on what the law says. And it might not be what you want. Maybe you have a child that you don't have a relationship with, or maybe you already gave them money during your lifetime. You said, look here, I gave you your down payment for your house. So now the rest of, this portion is going to go to your other siblings. If it's not in writing, it doesn't matter. You can say it. You can have a family meeting, gather everyone together on the kitchen table. You have a lot of this, all this, that, but that doesn't matter. If you don't have it in writing and have an estate plan, whether a trust or a will, it does not matter. So it just adds unnecessary costs and delays by having now your kids in court, having to do with the legal process. A lot of times I know clients come to me and, we sit down and put together, and every plan is different. Every plan is different depending on the size of your family, the assets and all of that. And when we sit down and say, okay, look, this is what, it's going to cost. I'm like, oh, I don't have that money or, I still have time. That's my other one. I still have time. Well, maybe in a year, 2 years.
Right.
You never know. And what you thought was expensive becomes much more expensive if your kids have to go to court, if they have to have, judges involved, attorneys involved, disputes, and you're just leaving that headache. So that's definitely one mistake, is not having a proper estate plan. Okay. Some of the documents, and Alejandro, I'm sure you probably have heard some of these. I'm very familiar with them. Yep. These are what we call like your most basic must have. And one myth that I want to kind of debunk: you don't have to be a Rockefeller or a Kennedy or a Musk or a Bezos to bring it into, newer names to have these. This is estate planning is not just for the wealthy. It's for the living. If you're alive and you have a home, maybe a little bit of money in a bank account, some investments, that Alejandro's helping you grow, you need to have a estate plan. You need to have your power of attorneys, your healthcare designations, living wills, have your trust with pour over wills. So that gives you control on how you want to have those assets distributed. So this is what's going to help you avoid that number one mistake. Okay.
Yeah.
So a second mistake is thinking that a will avoids probate. So a will it's good. It's not the best. If I have to put it kind of like in categories, when I sit down and I go through and I do my little designs, I'm very much a visual kind of learner. I don't know about you, Alex, but
yeah,
I like to kind of see things. So when I sit down with my clients, my staff laughs at my notes because they're like drawing and charts and arrows, because that's just how visually I envision things.
It's easier sometimes.
Yeah. So I tell them, look, having from worst to best is not having anything. That is worse. Having a will is better than nothing, but it's not the best. Having a trust is the best. And the reason why a will is good, but it's not the best, is because it does not avoid probate. Right. That's a number one myth that people think, well, I have a will, I'm good, I'm protected. Yes and no. You are, because the will lets you control and say who you want your assets to go to, but it doesn't avoid probate, which that's our number one goal with estate planning, is avoiding probate. So will has to still go through that probate process. You still have to get the court involved. You just have like a clear direction. You have a map that's telling you what to do. So the best way to avoid that mistake number 2, is having a revocable living trust. And I'm sure, Alejandro, you've seen where investments, maybe they have the trust named as a beneficiary, and work with different types of trusts. I know we have, in the trust world, we have an irrevocable life insurance trust, depending on the person's, estate and how much net worth they have. There's different trusts that we can create and like put a little bit here, put a little bit there to offset inheritance taxes.
Right.
And that's
Right.
where working with an estate planner and a financial advisor hand in hand, and we talk to each other, and there'll be plenty of times where I'll have financial advisors refer me clients for the estate planning side. And once I sit with them and I come up with a plan, I go ahead and I email the financial advisor with the client's permission of, hey,
Right.
this is what I have in mind. This is how I'm going to structure it. They give me their feedback. Sometimes they'll be like, well, we were thinking of putting this into this type of vehicle. And we work hand in hand because they are very, they sync together
Absolutely.
for a full plan. So
Yeah.
a trust is a key part of that. Okay. Real quick, I'm going to see the question here. Liana says, define what probate is. Perfect. Not a problem. Probate, all it basically is the legal process when someone dies, if they die either without any estate planning or if they die with a will only. So no trust. It is the process of legally distributing their assets according to what either the law says or what their will states. Okay. So it's, you have to, even if you have a will, the person that you name as the executor of your will has to go through this process of having that will filed with the court, having a judge determine if it's a valid will. Because trust me, there's some of those do it yourself. Yeah, ahora chat GPT.
Right. Oh, ChatGPT.
Oh, we gotta love ChatGPT. ChatGPT is good for like finding your favorite restaurant, planning a vacation.
Absolutely.
ChatGPT is not good to replace, your financial advisor or your attorney. Okay.
Correct.
I've had people come to me and with a will or a trust that they've done on ChatGPT. I'm like, I'm not even gonna look at that.
Oh, I have portfolios coming into me daily about, oh, there's a ChatGPT told me, and I'm like, oh,
Oh, Dios mío. Oh my God, I can only imagine.
let's sit down and chat.
Yes, let's come on. Let's bring you down to earth. But that's what probate is if you had a will, that will still has to go make sure it's a valid will, that it was meets the requirements of the state of Florida, what the statute says a will needs to have in order to be valid. Because if it's not, and I've had it happen where they've done it with un notario or they did it on themselves, I was at Staples the other day. It was like the first time in forever that I've actually gone into like a office, like a store like that, for office supplies, because I always buy everything on Amazon. And I'm with
Right.
my daughter, and we're walking down this aisle. They had the aisle where they have like the forms. And my daughter goes, look, Mom, they have like forms, wills, and form contracts and deeds. I go, don't worry, honey. That is what keeps me in business.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Because they do them wrong, unfortunately. And so then I have to come in and fix those mistakes.
That's it.
But that's what probate is going through that legal process where a judge distributes your assets if you didn't have a will or a trust or estate plan. Now, a trust avoids probate. It's much easier and simpler, and it's private. Nobody gets to see what the trust says, who's going to be receiving. All of that is private. A will is private until you die. Once you pass away, that will gets filed with the court and becomes public records. So everybody can chismosear and read your will. And it doesn't matter if you're a famous person. I mean, there's plenty of people who have died with just wills, like artists and so forth, that you can go into the court system and look at a copy of their will and exactly what it says.
Didn't Prince unfortunately die without one, and
Yes,
it was just a nightmare.
Yes, he did. He died without a estate plan. Aretha
Unbelievable.
Franklin died with a will, and I believe, if I remember correctly, she had like a bunch of money under a couch cushion. It's crazy. These
Unbelievable.
are
It's wild.
mega stars with millions of dollars, and yet they don't take the time to do this.
Right.
So yeah, so probate costs money, court involvement, takes time. potentially your family's fighting because if you didn't leave things in writing, they
Yep.
don't know what the true intentions were. No, mom always told me that all her jewelry was for me. Well, if mom didn't leave it in writing, it's going to get distributed amongst all her children. So, want to avoid that. So, number 3, and this, Alex, I'm sure you've seen some of this happen with the accounts and not having beneficiaries. We'll talk on that.
Oh yeah.
Mistake number 3, not properly titling your property. And when we mean property, we mean real property, and we mean liquid assets, bank accounts, investment account, life insurance policies, anything like that. So any asset that is solely in your name and has no like beneficiary on it, or in a deed, if you co-own a property, let's say Alex and I co-own a property together and we do not have joint tenants with rights of survivorship language on it. If I die, my 50% of that property will have to go through probate. And same thing with his. So it's very important that all your properties are properly titled, whether they're in a trust, whether they have rights of survivorship, or Alex, talk a little bit about the importance of like the beneficiaries and when you set up accounts like that.
Yeah. So that's definitely mistake number 4, which I think we're going to lead into now. Not updating beneficiaries. You know, it's something unfortunately, it's very common that we see that in my industry, especially. I just think a common mistake a lot of individuals make is they think the will precedes the beneficiaries, and it doesn't actually, which is pretty, powerful to think. So obviously, it leads back to the point that you're discussing, the trust, why the trust is so critical. However, like the great philosopher Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. You know, life changes, divorces occur, births happen, I mean, grandchildren, children, death of beneficiaries. And guess what? The paperwork does not change unless if you physically go and make these changes. So unfortunately, it is something that we see quite a bit occur. That's like, oh, you know what? I have my beneficiary, or even when we open the accounts, they don't add beneficiaries, and then it's too late. Or like you said, probate strikes. Another common issue we see is that people think of obviously their bank account as the primary account, so that's where they add the beneficiary. But guess what? They forget their 401ks, their 403bs, their IRAs, which are investment retirement accounts, which obviously I handle, life insurance policies, pretty much anything, like you said, that has tangible value or assets. You need to be able to update the beneficiaries.
Even a CD. If you go
correct.
a 6-month CD or 9-month or year CD, don't just think, well, it's just 6 months. We never know what can happen. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen. And
Right.
if someone passes away and that CD doesn't have a beneficiary named on it, guess what? Now you're having to go through probate unnecessarily.
Yeah. And then you got to look, and then like you said, on our side, obviously we are fiduciaries, right? So we're here to protect not only your information, but protect your assets. So the way that the banks look at it, it's like, hey, sorry, you know what? We're protecting your assets. This is the way it is. And there is no way around it. It is, I give obviously the industry a lot of credit because there's no backing down to it. It's not easy to go in and just change the beneficiary. Obviously, there are steps legally to make sure you do it properly, because that's another thing. You just don't want any Joe Schmo to come in and change a beneficiary. However, it is done to protect you as the client, which is a great thing. And then it kind of leads into another fact that there's primary beneficiaries, there's contingent beneficiaries. Obviously, primary are the first in line. Unfortunately, if you don't have any contingent and your primary beneficiary passes away, guess what? Goes to probate again. So all these are costly mistakes that you can avoid from just simply, and again, it doesn't have to be monthly, maybe yearly when we're doing our reviews, but it's definitely something that is very avoidable and has great consequences down the line.
I agree
Sorry.
with you I agree with
Yeah.
you wholeheartedly. And I'd say a good majority of the probates that we handle here could have easily been avoided by having a beneficiary on bank accounts.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd say the biggest example that I have from a case many years ago that I handled, and the lady had several investment properties that she owned. She lived here in Miami. She was originally from Spain, elder lady, and she was getting ready to retire. Well, she was retired, and she was basically wanting to go back to Spain, to her motherland,
Okay.
to live her years there. She sold off, I think it was like 4 or 5 properties that she had here in Miami, sold them all, basically converted all her real estate into liquid money, had it sitting in an account, went and stayed temporarily with a friend of hers because she had no house
Right.
until she made the move. It was right around the holidays, so after Christmas and whatnot, she was going to go to Spain. She had a heart attack and died.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, her friend's like, okay, well, want to have all her personal belongings. In fact, I even have her ashes. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because she was not married. She never had children. She had no estate plan. She had about almost $1 million sitting in an account with no beneficiary. So now we have to go through probate. And then the kicker is, because of the fact that she had no estate plan in place, no will, trust, beneficiary, it went according to what the law says, which the law then, determined based on, the factors that she was not married, no children, her parents had died. It went to her 2 siblings, which she hated and had no relationship with, hadn't spoken to them in probably 30 years.
Yep.
But that's who inherited all of her money.
Yeah.
So that to me is like such a huge example of and it was unexpected. Yeah, I mean, she was older, but she thought, she still had plenty of years left ahead of her, and she had a heart attack and passed away unexpectedly.
Yeah. Which obviously leads to the point of, you want to make sure that your beneficiaries still coordinate with your estate plan, because like you said,
Exactly.
Unfortunately, going back, life happens, things change, relationships change. I mean, some grow into, beautiful relationships, fostering great care. And then there's ones that are tarnished. And guess what? You know what? That doesn't align with their goals anymore. And also kind of going back to it, different beneficiaries have different kind of tax implications.
Correct.
Whereas like a spouse has a little bit more flexible options compared to a non-spouse. So again, goes back to the next point, which is mistake number 5, which is not having a coordinated financial plan. And I think this is where, as you can see, look how excited I get about this plan, because I think this is really where a good financial planner, a good estate attorney really differentiates itself from other individuals, because this is the plan that is a living, breathing plan that we make sure that all your goals, all your aspirations, your legacy planning is going to be executed, right? I always like to go back to kind of going back to a simpler time when we're kids. I mean, most of us, I think we all had like that one box that had your toys, had your memories, you know what I mean? You felt safe, secure, you had fun with that box.
Yeah.
Then guess what? We get older, we get more boxes, we get more stuff. It gets more complicated. And then now, with all these boxes, do you know where everything is? Do you know what the value is? Do you know what the worth is? Do you know who you want to leave it to? What happens if, like you said, an emergency occurs? Who's going to make these decisions for you? And that's where the financial plan is really the stepping stone to success. I think too, again, not bringing up anything right now, market conditions, obviously, we're seeing some volatility in the market just with the current situation, right? But guess what? When you have a financial plan in place and you say, hey, guess what? We stress tested for a moment like this in the market, you're going to sleep better at night. And I think that's usually my tagline. When people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them, I help you sleep better at night. And they're like, well, you're a doctor? And I'm like,
love that.
I'm your financial doctor. because you're going to sleep better at night knowing that the world could be ending, and guess what? We're still on track. So I think this point of financial planning is so critical. And I think a lot of us tend to, talk about the investment vehicles, talk about how we're going to get there, but we don't plan this aspect enough. So kind of walking through the process, the way at least I do it is obviously it's very goal orientated. We're focusing on your goals. And then the process is the most critical aspect. That's where we get down to the nitty gritty. We are going to look at all your accounts, see how you're invested. Because I think a lot of times too, you might think you're more risk willing to take on more risk and you're more risk adverse. Yeah. And guess what? Your positions or your portfolio is not created that way. And I think the level of being able to understand what risk you're willing to take makes it a lot easier in the process.
Also, I mean, if I could interject, you also have different risk at different times. So maybe when if someone starts planning with you, like let's say they're in their mid 30s, late 30s, well, they can be a lot riskier at the beginning because they have plenty of years to build up on that. So maybe they're like, you know what, let's be a little bit more aggressive now. Let's kind of, build this up a little bit more and then reevaluate it. Maybe by the time that they're hitting, like 50, like someone that just landed on the 5th floor, maybe they kind of scale back a little bit on that risk and decide, you know what, let's scale it a little bit back. I still have several years where I can be a little bit, I want to make sure I have some stuff. So that's also important, right?
Correct. Absolutely. And then another process is what I consider, it's called bucketing the money. We have to have the short term, midterm, long term. Obviously, different risks could be associated with it. Obviously, short term, it's something that, you might need within, the 9 to 12 months. So at that point, it has to be fairly risk adverse because we want to ensure that the capital is safe. If we need to inject it into either home improvement or life in general, I mean, your kids' schooling, there's so many different factors. And I think that's too why financial planning is so critical, because like you said, what's good for your neighbor or fulanito here might not be what's good for you, right? Yeah. So, and even then, I've had clients that say, you know what, I want to leave everything to my kids. And then I have clients that say, guess what? I've worked my butt off. I'm going to spend every single dime of it. So I have to coordinate saying, all right, let's see how we're going to accomplish this. So again, this is where it gets really, really fun and entertaining for me, is really fostering a relationship with the client, making sure that they know that I'm their go-to. I want to be able to help them make, even if it's a decision about buying a car, buying a house, buying a retirement home, leaving to another state in retirement, we're able to build this in this plan, which is phenomenal. It's a living, breathing plan. You have access to it virtually, meaning on your computer. We update it because, again, life changes. What you might want 6 months from now might change, a year and a half from now. So I think those are all very critical aspects of what we consider a coordinated plan. And then along with that is obviously we talk about the investment, the insurance, retirement strategy, estate planning. Because again, we want to make sure that we're going ahead and creating a plan, and we're going to leave it to the loved ones that we consider. We've worked so hard, and nothing's easy in life. But guess what? If you're able to leave that legacy behind, I think it's an incredible feeling. I've already been able, fortunately, to see that with some of my clients, and I think it's one of the best feelings when it's like, oh man, I've had 10 years with this individual, and now they're paying for their grandkids' education. They're funding their retirement dreams, because that's another thing too. I think a lot of clients tend to focus on their kids and other family members, but you know what? You're still living. You want to go ahead and kind of, the fruits of your labor should be enjoyed.
Work hard for it. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I agree. And then the same thing from my perspective with my estate plan. I have clients. That's one thing I want to tell, I tell people is when you come in and you do your estate plan, it's not set in stone. It's a foundation. And depending on what phase of your life you're starting to create your estate plan, it's going to change and mold with you. Because if we started your estate plan when you're in your, let's say, mid 30s, and you just had your first child and you plan to have, more children, then obviously as children are born, we're going to change that plan. Or if you're in your late 50s, you've kind of already raised your kids, you're like, well, they're adults, but they don't really know what's going on. Right. So we're going to put that estate plan, and we can build into a trust where you're like, okay, if something happens to me, I want my assets to go to my kids, but we can put restrictions. Well, they can receive them once they turn 25 or once they turn 30, because at 18, 19 years old, they're going to go party in Vegas with some of that money. And you're like, no, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Or if you want to leave it to grandchildren, and then as grandchildren are born, we can distribute. So I tell people, don't think of this as like a set in stone or one and done type of thing. I'm here with you for years. And as your client, I have a client of mine that every so often he'll call me and will keep increasing the age that his son is to receive his inheritance, because he's like, yeah, no, he's still too immature. And
there you go.
My client has a substantial portfolio, and he's like, "Do te imagina if I also this kid inherits, $3-4 million?" He's like, "No." He's like, "No." Yeah. So every so often he goes, "Alina, we have to increase the age. We went from like 24 to 27. I think we're up to 30 at the last change that we did."
Yep.
But again,
I've seen it happen. Trust me, I've seen clients.
That's the beauty that lets you do that. Or
absolutely,
I've also had clients that, between their real properties and their investment accounts, they have, let's say, a child that has an addiction problem, whether it's gambling or whether it's drugs. Their biggest fear is, if I die and I want to leave these assets to them, I want to provide for them, but I don't want them to waste it all away, or worse, do something that would lead to them passing. That's where a trust, and having a trust as a beneficiary on all these investment accounts, and naming a trustee to manage it for that child is so important. So there's just so many things we can do. And it really, I tell people, doing your estate plan, sitting down, looking, is not just about the assets you have. So I say, this is not just for the Rockefellers, the Elon Musks of the world. This is for the everyday person that has worked hard, has built some type of, has their home. Oh yeah, any home nowadays in Miami is easily costing $1 million.
No, for sure.
So they have a home, they have a retirement account, they have, once you really sit down and look at it, most people are like, oh, I don't have anything. No, you do.
Yeah.
And they want to protect that. So that is the goal of putting it in an investment vehicle, having a trust. If you pass away, be the beneficiary. So then that trustee that you name, whether it's, a family or a friend or someone you trust, can continue working with us to be like, okay, you did my mom's estate plan, you did my mom's financial planning, is what she did. All right, this is going to go, to my kids, but not until they reach a certain age. So we continue investing it. We leave it there. We continue working with it and planning with it, right?
Absolutely. It's funny you say that, because I think that's how generational wealth is created, obviously. And if you look back, and yes, obviously I'm naming the Rockefellers and stuff like that, but there's been definitely a lot of individuals that have done it right, and ensured that multiple generations could live an amazing life. And again, it's not all about money, but unfortunately, you still need money to do things, right? And I think even a lot of dreams and aspirations and hobbies, it costs money, and things are getting more expensive. As you can see too, inflation, just keeping up with inflation is critical. And I think that's where I see a lot of the downfall in financial planning. I see a lot of individuals sitting on cash on the sidelines. One, it's either headline risk or fear, and it's such a big inefficiency, because unfortunately, the purchasing power of the dollar is just eroding.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, again, it doesn't mean that you have to be in a risky investment to get returns, because actually my job is to mitigate as much risk as possible to ensure that we hit all these financial goals. Peter Lynch, he led the Magellan Fund for Fidelity. His average rate of return was 26.2%. And really that's not, I mean, that's incredible, but that's not the point I'm trying to make.
Every day and twice on Sunday. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. But one of the quotes he's famous for saying is far more money has been lost by investors preparing for corrections or trying to anticipate corrections than has been lost in the corrections themselves. So it's very powerful. You know, I hate those individuals that tell you, "Oh, don't worry." Of course, we're going to worry. They're scary moments, right?
Of course.
And anybody that tells you that, to be honest with you, full of shit. Because I mean, you're going to worry, right?
Of course.
However, that's where the financial plan really comes into play and say, "Hey, we tested for this. We're okay. Guess what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to continue down this path." Staying disciplined is definitely where I come into play. Human emotions are, you know, I help manage them because trust me, there are mornings that I wake up and I look at the futures and I'm not feeling well because I know my clients, you know, like they work so hard.
You're gonna get phone calls.
Yeah, it's not even the phone calls. It's just making sure because I'm so invested. It's really the relationship with my clients that's so critical to me. But at the same time, that's when I say, hey, you know what? We're okay. We've seen this. It's happened before. Look, I remember when I started in the industry, we were worried about Ebola. I don't know if you remember the Ebola scare we had.
Oh, yes.
I started the industry. I'm like, what? Ebola? Zika. Obviously, the pandemic. I mean, the great risk. I mean, in 08, the financial crisis. I was just graduating college looking for a job in the banking industry. Super scary times. And guess what? We're all here. We're all okay. We're actually probably prospering more because the markets always return to all-time highs. And that's the beauty about the financial plan because I'm able to sit here right now and have these conversations saying, hey, we're going to be okay. Yeah. So that's, I think, obviously leads into the next one, the poor tax planning. So let me begin by saying, obviously, I'm not a CPA.
Me neither.
So I don't give tax advice, but I make tax efficiency. I give you strategies to make sure that obviously the impact of what you're leaving for your beneficiaries or your loved ones is the most that you're leaving them possible without the burden of taxes. Obviously, that's the conversation that everybody has, that we pay so much in taxes. Hey, you know what? Unfortunately, we have to, but the same time, there are definitely ways that we can make it more efficient. So obviously, it goes back to the structure of trust, structuring your financial planning, your estate planning properly, right? I could be here for days trying to explain some of these strategies, but I'll kind of give some high level ideas of where I think you can maximize or, you know, kind of not make a poor decision that will impact the estate planning aspect, right? Mm-hmm. So I think one of them is no strategy for tax deferred accounts. Obviously, your retirement accounts, your 403Bs, your 401Ks, all tax deferred. If you do not plan properly later on, when you do have to take out your RMDs, which are your required minimum distributions, obviously it could be a massive tax burden. Mm-hmm. Even beneficiaries, the way that they receive those accounts, they have a time frame where, because like everything, Uncle Sam's always coming. They want, you know, they're knocking on the door. They say, hey, guess what? This money grew tax deferred. We did you guys a favor, but you know, they obviously want their hands in the pockets as well.
Yeah.
I think there's so many other strategies. I think a lot of an HSA, a health savings account, something that a lot of individuals do not either talk about or plan for. Again, another tax deferred account reduces taxable income for the year. And then again, I could get into much more depth about that, but you know, it's a strategy that
its own webinar of how in depth you can go into that.
Exactly.
And one thing I want to add from an estate planning side that maybe a lot of people don't realize is the state of Florida has no inheritance tax at a state level.
Correct.
I joke around and say that's why the snowbirds love us. You know, that's
Yep.
why they come and retire here, because New York does, but
Yep.
Florida doesn't. So
Absolutely.
currently, with the current congressional limits, it's any estate that has a value of $15 million or more. That's when it's considered a taxable estate. When it
Correct.
exceeds that, for a couple is, that's an individually. So if you're a husband
Yeah.
and wife, you share that. You have that double the amount. So a lot of times, a lot of people I'm dealing with, they're not at that 15. Some are close. I'm not, there are some that are close.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I do have some that do exceed, which then that's where we have to get a little, creative with our strategies of like,
Right.
okay, well, maybe we want to open up a life insurance. Maybe we want to
Right.
open up an annuity. Maybe we want to do this and then have it funnel through different types of trusts that would provide an offset some of that tax implication to your heirs.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the average client that we deal with as far as their estate planning goes, between real property, assets in the bank, anywhere between the 5 to 6 million in assets or less. And so they're generally, we don't have to worry about that, but hopefully we do, because the goal is always for you to grow.
Right.
So that at a federal level, that's currently what it is. Whether Congress is going to change that, it was supposed to set to switch back now in 2026. Haven't seen anything to that effect, because it did used to be about 5.6 million and it kind of got doubled.
Yep.
So hopefully it doesn't go back to that, because if it does, then a lot of us are going to have to reevaluate our tax strategies.
Yep. You're right.
But yes, definitely poor tax planning is a big number one mistake. We don't want to.
Yeah.
I know this is being recorded, but we don't want to give the IRS any more money than we have to.
Exactly. That's where I think that's where I tell most of my clients, it's like, even, unfortunately, you do have to pay taxes, because obviously it is beneficial for society. However, they're going to be sitting on your money, when you could be doing a lot more with it, and an interesting strategy, even a 529.
Yes.
A lot of people think, it's college planning, absolutely, but a lot of the wealthy individuals use it as a tax deferred growth account. They could super fund the account up to 5 years to max out one, like you said, either depending on what state they live in, to bring down their inheritance tax. So basically, you're allowed to give $19,000 a year in gifting, which is another pretty cool strategy as well. If you want to, because I think a lot of people too say, hey, you know what? I want to see my family enjoy my money.
Of course.
Guess what? We could do that within the years, which is awesome. Imagine if you could give $19,000, or again, joint couples could give $38,000, because it's obviously a married couple. You could give $38,000 to your loved one and see them enjoy it for the year.
Yeah.
We could definitely do that. So I think, like you said, this is where the combination of where our collaboration is awesome. That's why I was so excited to do this webinar, because, having somebody, especially trustworthy as yourself, it makes it so much easier to do the financial planning.
Absolutely. So let's go on to our mistake number.
Katie just asked, sorry, who would you advise going for tax? So obviously, number one, tax CPA. You can't go wrong with the CPA. Like I said, it's just, unfortunately, my industry, I can make you tax efficient. I can give you strategies. However, I'm a fiduciary and I'm not allowed to give you tax advice. So CPA definitely. Obviously, I think there's some lawyer, but there's some lawyers that are CPAs or a tax attorney. Exactly.
There are lawyers that specifically, they specialize in tax law and tax issues.
Yeah.
So I always advise. I start off the same thing with the same disclaimer. I am not a CPA. I am not a tax attorney. So I do not want to give tax advice. I definitely suggest. I always suggest that they speak to their accountant, depending on their net worth. If it's a high net worth client that I'm dealing with, definitely we bring in talking to a tax attorney as well. But either one of those two can give you a little bit better on the tax strategy and the implications that it might have on how to best structure it. Yeah. So mistake number 7, not communicating the plan to the family. So this is what we talk about, that people, the ostrich effect, they don't want to talk about it. They don't know what's going on. They're kind of left in the dark. And, unfortunately, I know in our culture, being Hispanic, this is a big thing. Nobody wants to talk. They think you're being chismoso. They think you're trying to find out what's going on, what, metiendo la nariz donde no debe, and just trying to see what I have. And that's not it. It's not a matter. And like when I would speak to my parents, about this as they got older, or also another fear is they might be like, well, are you trying to control me? Are you trying to control what I have? And it's not a matter of that. And like I would tell my parents, look, you guys worked your butt off. I want you to enjoy every single last dime of yours. I don't expect you to leave me anything. I have the same opportunity to work and generate my own wealth. I want you to be taken care of and plan, but I need to make sure there's a plan in place, because otherwise I'll be irresponsible of them and of me to make sure that there isn't a plan in place for once they get older. And like I told my mom, oh yeah, Social Security, your retirement, you're not going to get a raise. That's not going to go up. It goes up very little. It doesn't go up according to the cost of living. I still have a chance to, make more money. You need to work with what you have and budget yourself and plan according to what you have. So definitely your family members might not know what you want to do. They don't know if you do have an estate plan. It's a secreto. I'm like, no, bueno, no lo vea. No, it's, you don't have, it's important that there's communication. Maybe there's certain things that you want to say, look, I have my estate planning. Like I'm very open. Both of my parents have since passed. So, I have my husband, I have my brother, and I've told my brother, if anything ever happens to me, I bring him over to my husband. Like, you see this black filing cabinet? I open up the drawer. I'm like, you see this folder? Everything of mine is in that folder. So if something happens to me, come and get this folder. My estate planning is there, a spreadsheet with whatever investments we have, phone numbers. I've actually put together, and I give it to my estate planning clients, a book of my assistant Jordan, who I don't know if she's on here with us or not, but she did this amazing book that's basically for now I've died. Here's my information. Because a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, but I have that saved on an Excel spreadsheet on my computer. But that's wonderful, because if you don't know the password to mom's computer to get in there and access that spreadsheet, how are you going to get it?
Right.
And a lot of us, we rely on this technology. And I learned that, especially with my mom that passed away a couple of years ago. Thank God I had all her passwords, because if not, it's like I couldn't get into her phone. I couldn't get into her computer. I couldn't get into it. And what am I doing? I can't ask her. So sometimes old school paper and pen is important. So we put that together. We give it to our clients so they can write down, where do they have their bank accounts? Who are their financial planners? This is their contact. Plenty of times I will have clients call me, or the children of my clients. And those are the hardest calls, where it's a client that I did their estate plan like 3-4 years ago. And they call me like, hey, Alina, you did my mom's estate plan and my mom has passed. And it breaks my heart, because obviously there are clients, but they're like, I found all the papers. What do I have to do now? And I sit down with them, and it's super easy, because we did their estate plan, and they're there. They're like, that's it? That's all I got to do? Like, yeah, because your mom or your dad, we left everything planned. That's all you got to do. And they're like, wow, that was easy. So communicating with your family so they know that you have this in place, and so they're aware. So the day that you aren't here, they don't have to go scrambling, because unfortunately, like I mentioned, trusts are not public records. Wills are not public records until you pass. And then they have to find that will. And there's plenty of times that, I have clients ask me, how do I know if my mom had a will? Or how do I know? You literally have to go through their papers. If they didn't tell you, if they didn't give you a copy, if they didn't tell you where it was, you're just going to have to rummage and go through all of their belongings, whatever mail comes in. Keep an eye out for any investment accounts, anything that they might have, bank accounts. And that's the thing, so communication is key.
I unfortunately too, during those moments, it's such a hard time, and I think your mindset is just in another place. You're scatterbrained, right? So imagine having to do all this. Unfortunately, I've seen it happen too when they've come into the institute, the bank or the office to take care of something like that. And it's a horrible conversation to have, and then trying to guide them, and then they're almost like, they give you a blank stare, like, what do I do? So the ability to leave your loved ones to have an ease. I know again it's you're the one unfortunately that passed away, but you're planning for your legacy, and it's just such a smoother transition for them. And it's part of life, right? Unfortunately.
It is. So we're gonna wrap this up. We have two questions here, and we have like a minute or two left. So if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat right now, so we can take care of addressing those. Those that want to stay on, by all means. If you have to leave, totally understand. So Katie asked, "What do you think about having an executor or trustee as a beneficiary? Is it better to have someone more objective or less conflict of interest?" That's a great question. You can have both. So a beneficiary can also serve as a trustee, and they have kind of two different roles in the process. And they wear the trustee's hat, and they have a fiduciary duty to all the other beneficiaries of managing the assets and carrying out the assets exactly how it's left in the trust. If they don't, they can be sued. So if you have a trust and let's say you name someone as your trustee, and they are a beneficiary as well, and they mismanage the assets for the other beneficiaries, they can be sued by those beneficiaries and be removed as a trustee if they're not acting in a good capacity. My advice always is so legally, who can serve as a trustee is you have to be at least 18 years of age. Ideally, it's someone that resides in the state where you're located. So if it's in Florida, they reside here in Florida. They don't always have to, but that's ideal because obviously they're dealing with, especially if they're dealing with properties here. But they have to at least be 18 years of age, and they can't be a convicted felon. Those are like the basic requirements. I always tell people, name someone that, well, obviously you trust, that their ideology aligns with yours and what you've created in your plan, and that possibly has some sort of financial savviness if you're leaving an estate that's predominantly liquid investments, monies. So someone that maybe has experience working with a financial advisor, or is a financial advisor, or has that type of experience, so that they can help if the goal is to create that generational wealth and reinvest those assets. They know how to work with that. It doesn't always have to be a family member. It doesn't have to be your spouse or your children. It could be a friend or a trusted advisor. It's just make sure the person that you are putting in charge of that, they're taking on a big responsibility. So make sure they can handle that. A lot of times I'll have people like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to name my mom and dad." Well, obviously mom and dad are older than us. So as they go on, if mom and dad, that would be a burden to them to have to deal with that. You might want to change it and reassess it and name another trustee, in that type of situation. So definitely a beneficiary can also be an executor or a trustee. They have to have that responsibility to all the beneficiaries. Leonardo asked, "Can you give an example of a tax impact or savings in having only a will versus a trust or estate planning?" So a will does not give you any type of tax saving strategy. A will is basically you're leaving your instructions to a court on how you want your assets distributed. That is it. That's all it is. A very basic. It gives you the control to say how you want things distributed, but that's it. Where having a trust or a more robust estate plan, working together with the financial advisors, we can put different assets in different buckets or in different trusts, depending on the type of asset, the amount of the asset, if needed, to avoid or minimize. You're never going to get away with not paying taxes, okay?
Correct.
Minimizing it as much as possible. So definitely, if there is a concern of you have a taxable estate, currently anything that exceeds 15 million, definitely you need to have trusts. Having a will alone is like having a huge open gash wound on your arm that someone like ripped open your arm and you put a band-aid on it.
That's it.
It might keep it closed for a little bit, but it's not going to do anything. You need to go in and have surgery and have someone, sew it up and bandage it correctly. Ponerle una curita is not going to do anything. So that's that's my, I guess, the best example I can give with a will and a trust. A will is okay, but at that point, it's not the best type of strategy planning for a tax estate.
One of the ways too, though, is the step up cost basis, especially for the home value. So that kind of goes directly where you have a savings and a tax implication. If the house is not in a trust, guess what? You bought that house 40 years ago. Your capital gains on that is going to be assessed from 40 years ago, and not the step up cost basis of that. And that's going if they're going to sell the house, obviously.
And very important, because I always get people that call me like, oh, I want to add my daughter or my son to the title of the property. And thank you for bringing that point up, Alex. And my first question is always, why? Why do you want to do that? No, because if something happens to me, no. That is not what we're doing. You are basically jeopardizing that step up tax savings by adding them to the title of the property now. There's other ways we can do it. We can do it through a trust. We can do it through a ladybird deed. But adding them to the title now is never a smart idea if it's only because, oh, if something happens to me, I want to avoid probate. It's not just avoiding probate, it's avoiding probate and protecting their step up basis. Where if you bought that house 30 years ago and that house was worth $80,000 when you bought it, and nowadays it's worth $1 million. Well, guess what? That $920,000 of equity, you've just exposed them to have to pay taxes on that.
And it happens.
Yeah, it does, because people quick claim deed, quick claim deed.
Right.
And
also it happens with stocks have the same benefit too of stock, the step up cost basis, which is nice as well. So obviously, going back to it, like we were talking about, it's asset protection, which is a nice thing. So I've seen that happen again too, and the step up cost basis is just, I mean, it's awesome. The clients are like, wow, thank God.
Automatic.
It's a good feeling.
Automatic tax savings that you don't have to pay for if it's done correctly. Now, I've had clients come to me that they've added their kid on the title, and then they're like, oh, wait, no, let's undo it. It's too late. It's already kind of been done. It's public record, especially with a property. So Katie's asking, what is the step up cost basis? So the step up cost basis is where your children are or your heirs, let's not always say children, your heirs are inheriting this asset, and they're receiving the benefit of all the appreciation and value tax-free. So in that example I just gave, let's say mom and dad bought a house, and when they bought it originally, the house was worth $100,000. They had it for 30 years. And that property now is paid off. It has an equity. And let's say when mom and dad die, the property is worth $900,000. Well, that $800,000, and the kids turn around and decide, okay, we're going to sell it because we don't need it. I have a house. My siblings have houses. We just want, we're going to sell it. That $800,000 in equity, which is basically what you're inheriting, is tax free, because it's a step up in basis. Where if you added your kid to the title, or, just in case something happens, you now have jeopardized that. Now they're going to be subject to taxes from the value of when they were added to title to the day that you die. And now they're going to have capital gains taxes on that unnecessarily. So that's why it's very important that you speak with someone who does this, who knows, because I have so many people, no, pero my cousin, mi vecino, no, me dieron un quick claim deed, yo fui un notario. And it's like, oh my God, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And I'm like,
I always tell people to be worried when somebody tells you, oh, my pool boy or my pool guy told me to buy this stock. And I'm like, oh man, we're in trouble. So it's almost similar. Whenever the pool guy's telling you that, oh boy. So, another cool thing too about if you do add the house to the trust, I think a lot of individuals forget your homeowner's insurance. You have to add the home as an additional insurer, because obviously the home is now the trust owns a home, so the trust has to be on the insurance policy, because if not, there goes your claims.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's another feature a lot of individuals tend to forget. So that's why obviously the collaboration between us and what we do, I think, is so critical, and a lot of these little mistakes are avoidable. And it's as easy as just picking up the phone call and calling us,
Yeah.
and we take care of it, which is
Informing
awesome.
yourself, exactly. So Kitty says, thank you. So if the house is in a trust, then it automatically has a step up cost basis. Yes, it will.
Yep.
That's why, honestly, trusts are the best estate planning tool, and I'm one that I'm constantly kind of shouting it out there. And it's not just for rich people.
Yeah.
People think, oh, trust fund babies and the trust and the trust, and oh, I don't have. No, it's
No.
it's
Yeah.
it's for protecting your assets, avoiding
That's it.
probate, keeping things private, being able to have that control to set up how you want your assets distributed depending on your family situation, setting things up for generations, for legacy. Also, you can set it up where if, let's say, you have a child that's married, we're not even going to get into that. That's a whole other webinar as well. Or maybe they're with a spouse and you're like, oh, no, I worked very hard. Yo no quiero que la esposa, el esposo, no, this is for my kid. And I get it. We're all here protecting our children. And there's ways, all of that can be structured. So that's why it's important to sit down and not just talk about the assets, but talk about what is your goal? What do you envision? What do you want? And then we can structure the estate planning, the financial planning to meet those goals.
Yep.
So, awesome. Thank you, Alex. I truly appreciate you being on here with me. I mean, I think we gave a lot of helpful and useful information. I hope those attending found this as informative and as helpful as we think. Thank you, Katie. Katie's is a fabulous webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been amazing.
We do these every so often. So if you don't follow us on social media, please follow us, because I do try to put out a lot of this wonderful content and have people on as well that collaborate with what we do to bring you guys as much as information. So follow us on our social media. We have Alejandro's information there, his email, his website, his phone number. Reach out to him. He's wonderful at what he does. And any of you that need your estate plan, if you have already done it, you want us to look it over, happy to. If you haven't done it, please take care of it. No deje para mañana lo que puedes hacer hoy, as my father would say. Don't leave it for tomorrow. You never know. You honestly don't. And it's better to just be prepared and have it, and it's done. It gives you peace of mind.
I always tell people a second pair of eyes allows two things. It allows you to either learn something new, or to say, guess what? My current plan is doing great. And you sleep better at night.
Exactly. Exactly. And if it's not, then we can fix it. I've done that. I've told clients, look, these documents are good. This one, maybe we should change. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to have you, oh, no, you got to redo them. No, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at least let us review it with you and sit down. So wonderful. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So much. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Thank you, Alex. And until the next one.
Awesome. Bye.